Hello and welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. Got some interesting rumours and stuff for you today. I've done one video on this already. It's basically how Lucasfilm is planning on removing the sequel trilogy from canon. It's like a never-ending update, basically. There's little bits of more and more information dropping from other people, other channels, other sources, so on and so forth. So, as I try to keep you up to date on it all, I thought we would just cover it. So we'll do a bit of a recap, and then we'll get into the main bulk of it. This article is linked down below in the description box. They do a good, a very good job of recapping it all. So, again, remember, it's all rumor, and I can't verify it. It's unverified at this point in time, but it's still interesting, and it's Disney, and I wouldn't put it past them. But then I also do think it's dumb as all at the same time. It's just a whole big mess, and I'm sure you'll all agree with me. You don't want to give Disney the benefit of the doubt because, of course, it's Disney and they've not exactly handled the property right. But then at the same time, you do look at it and you go, well, it's Disney. They like to double down. So it's really difficult to work out, where to lie on this one, of whether it's true, bad, false, whatever. But let's dive into it, shall we? So a new rumour obviously has emerged that elaborates on how Lucasfilm will remove the Disney sequel trilogy that began with The Force Awakens. Now, to set it all up, this initially started from another YouTuber, Doomcock, who basically said that they were going to use the Veil of the Force. And I think the Veil of the Force is a pretty dumb idea anyway. And I said in my previous videos that it's basically like the Professor X of the Star Wars world. Like, it's universe breaking. It's one of those things that you, as a writer, you should never add in because it can be used to do stuff like this. And, you have to write your way out of not using it in future. It's just really lazy. But again, it's Disney, so of course they are lazy and they do dumb decisions. So he would say basically the Veil of the Force was a concept introduced in Star Wars Rebels, Season 4, Episode 13, titled A World Between Worlds. And if you didn't know what it is, basically in that episode, Ezra Bridger enters a world between worlds through a painting of the Mortis gods that was originally located on the exterior of the Jedi Temple of Lothal. Now, Bridger enters this, a world between worlds, and discovers it's a place that allows him to access numerous points in time and space throughout Star Wars history. In fact, he uses it to rescue Ahsoka Tano from being killed by Darth Vader. So it's something which is physical as well. Like, it's not just an apparition. You can actually pull stuff through it. So the official Star Wars website explains that inside he found doorways between time and space and saved his friend Ahsoka Tano from death at the hands of Darth Vader. That's official canon. You can see why I think it's super dumb. And then, again, when you introduce these things, you ask yourself, like, why did you do it in the first place? It's so difficult to... Well, it's not difficult to write yourself around it, but you just have to... There's just so much plot armor involved now. So it's this, A World Between Worlds, that would allow Lucasfilm to sideline the Disney sequel trilogy and treat it as an alternate timeline. And there's some elements apparently to do with Darkseid Rey and things like that, right? So it continues. He indicated that J.J. Abrams' The Rise of Skywalker hinted at the Veil of the Force during the scene that introduces Dark Rey. In this scene, Rey discovers a secret room which is described as the Room of Mirrors on the second Death Star. It's this room of mirrors that allowed Sidious to access the Veil of the Force. So that, again, this is all alleged rumour at this point in time. Now, so there's the Room of Mirrors on the Death Star, where Dark Rey came from. But then also, there's a similar room on Exegol as well. Yep, you remember that dumb planet. And in order to remove the Disney sequel trilogy from existence, apparently Disney will have another character enter the Veil of the Force and ensure that Palpatine is unable to escape the destruction of the second Death Star through the Room of Mirrors, or he is prevented from returning to Exegol if he makes it into the Veil. So, basically, pluck him out of space and time, pluck him from space and time, I guess, and just say, hey, the setup for the whole, sequel trilogy didn't happen now, it's done. Now, Midnight's Edge then said that George Lucas faction within Lucasfilm has actually devised a number of ways in which the whole sequel trilogy could be removed from canon using established canon. Oh, good lord. And this is what I mean, like, when you write these things, and I think I said it in my last videos, that it was the same as Star Trek Into Darkness. They introduced a earth-shattering, world, universe-breaking element, which was people can just come back from the dead. Who cares? Whatever, fine. Like, at that point, you just think to yourself, well, who cares now? Like, who cares? Doesn't matter. Who cares? Death is cured. And it's exactly the same with Star Trek Picard. Death is essentially cured in that universe. Nothing has any risk. Who cares? So Andre from Midnight's Edge would go on and say, on their own accord, they snuck Easter eggs into the movie, setting up the mechanisms to one day possibly undo the entire trilogy. They did this by designing these Easter eggs into the sets and background, and they did it right under the nose of director J.J. Abrams and producer Kathleen Kennedy, neither of whom had any clue about it. So of these mechanisms, the Veil of the Force is the preferred and most logical option, but there are others too. Okay. Now, Andre would detail that George Lucas faction placed these Easter eggs. He would note, from what we can gather, that there was and still is no sanctioned plan within Disney to all-out remove the sequel trilogy from canon, which, again, like I say, is Disney. I give them props for The Mandalorian, but the people behind the the sequel trilogy weren't involved in that, so that's why I give it, I like it, and that's probably why I like it. But I don't put it past Disney that they would do stuff like this because they're super, super dumb. The way they handle Star Wars, and it's amazing because you do these videos and there's so many people who hate Disney that are so quick to defend it and call it nonsense. And it's like, what? Come on now, behave. Now, Andre would indicate that there might have been a decision made to render the sequel trilogy moot. He basically says, what I also hear, that while officially and formally all out striking the sequel trilogy from canon may be a long shot, the decision to effectively render it moot may already have been decided higher up in the food chain. So, we're talking about like Bob Iger, or now Bob Chapek. So he goes on and says, look, allegedly the higher-ups have examined the numbers, which is not very good, and reportedly don't feel the sequel trilogy provided the necessary foundation to build anything more upon, which makes sense. The rabid nature of the fan base that was there is no longer there. And so because of that, we are unlikely to see any more stories taking place in the aftermath of The Rise of Skywalker anytime soon, although we do have some things planned, apparently, but again, we'll see, whenever anything comes to fruition with that. Now, he basically says that what he's hearing is that instead it has been pretty much decided that it is the time frame between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens that will be the focal point of the storytelling going forwards, which is an interesting time frame. Like, that is interesting. The fall of the Empire, what happens, dissidents and the remnants, like, that's an interesting time frame to explore. I think everyone would agree. Now, he also said that within this time frame there will be an interconnected universe of live action and animated TV shows and possibly movies, although those are more likely to take place in other areas, but still prior to the time frame of The Force Awakens. So what are the sequel trilogy? Well, my understanding is that it might as well have had leprosy, funny, as they won't go near it. It may not be formally and officially removed from canon just yet, but it might as well have been, because while it retains its place in canon for now, it will reportedly be treated as if it never existed, and from the chronological perspective of where they are going, it still lies in the future. Interesting. And then he touches on Terminator, and he says, look, and if the Terminator franchise taught us anything, it's that the future is not set, so love a good reference there, my dude. Now, it's interesting as well, like, it is genuinely surprising. And then Andre says something very interesting. He basically goes on to say how the future of Star Wars could look like if this sequel trilogy is removed from canon. So, for the next few years, the time frame between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens will be mapped out, but there might not be no build, basically, towards The Force Awakens. In this new decision, is a hit with the audiences, then they might just basically continue down that path, diverging more and more from The Force Awakens, and introduce the Veil of the Force and the multiverse of Star Wars in animation, which I can see they would probably do that, but again, I just don't like it, and I think it's dumb, but I wouldn't put it past Disney. That's the point. So he it basically says, if the stars align and we move into the territory covered by the sequel trilogy, possibly still in animation, but do it differently, that way the sequel trilogy as it stands would slowly and gradually have been relegated to another timeline in the Veil of the Force, and thus have been removed from canon, leaving Disney free to move beyond that era. So there you go, there's the update on this never-ending saga of absolute nonsense, which is Star Wars currently at this point in time. What do you think? Let me know down below in the comment section. If you are new here, please do hit subscribe. Stay up to date on the world of pop culture movie news by hitting the bell notification icon. Really important to hit those notification icons. And also you can follow me on social media, so over on Instagram at Mr. H Reviews and Twitter with the same handle. Thank you all so much for watching. I've been Mr. H. Take care.